So basically what we covered, we're going to start the book now. I apologize, sometimes I'm trying to cut the conversation short because this book is very big. And if we diverge from it, and it doesn't mean what I say is correct, you can correct me anytime. So, but the key is to keep us online within the narrow aspects of the document that we're reading. And of course, it's an old English. The purpose of this is several-fold. One is to introduce us to actually the heritage that we have. One of the major aspects of it also, as Shoghi Effendi also is mentioning as well, is to really elevate our English itself, to really comprehend the meaning of the words, which some of it are lost because of the common language. So this gives us and that's why we're reading the book, actually. Otherwise, we could have consolidated this and just talk about the subject itself. So that's the second area. But the major aspects is to really comprehend level of sacrifices. And these are heroes and heroines of the faith that operated selflessly to bring this religion out of obscurity and fighting to keep it alive. And the condition, which is really unfathomable by us, living in a free society. And ironically, it's much easier for us to really look at this where we sit versus putting ourselves in their position and all the animosity and harm that they attracted to themselves just speak their mind. Where here, this comes natural to us. So the purpose is to really understand, comprehend what level of sacrifices they had to go through to really propagate this religion and make sure the light of God doesn't get extinguished. So we started with really some background regarding Shiites and Islam by itself. And of course, AHMAD-I-AHSÁ'Í, which is the 12 Imam Shias, which is different than, there are many different branches of Shia Islam as well. And of course, one of the major principles of this, both Sunni and Shia, are the basically day of judgment or day of resurrection, which really came about by first challenge to the Shia doctrine of literal translation of day of judgment, as, for example, Christians do today, where Shaykh movement, Shaykh AHMAD-I-AHSÁ'Í, came in and said, look, this is really allegorical, and celestial bodies are not going to drop on earth and everything get evaporated. And as we know what's going to happen if that occurs. So he started to really prepare and the society at that time with these books that he wrote over 100 books explaining allegorically and philosophically the writings of the time and basically Quran and positions of Quran in that form, and especially this fifth principle of the Islamic religion related to the Day of Judgment. So the whole process goes to that, and ironically, there are many references in Quran related to what happened in that time, where, for example, the fabric of society would be completely corrupted. Both ecclesiastical would raise against this new manifestation, and there are many social conditions that Shaykh Ahmad, which the leader of the movement, was seeing in the society. And the key element in his observation was that he wasn't a reformer, or he wasn't trying to steer the Shia Islam toward more modern thought. He came to the conclusion that because those conditions that was revealed in Quran related to the end of time, he saw that events, that those signs present at his time. And then he was preparing his followers for the basically 12th Imam, and of course return of Imam Hussein as well. As you know, there are twin manifestations in Islam as well, that are waiting for basically return of 12th Imam and coming of Imam Hussein. That means this is a twin manifestation which bring in a new cycle in the basically religious realm. So these are the key elements we need to be aware of. And so this Shaykhi movement got to that conclusion that the new religion will come and is imminent. So there is a differentiation between Shaykhi movement, which really preparation for masses of Islamic community to look for basically Messiah or 12th Imam and new manifestation. As well as during Bab'i dispensation, Bab's mission was really to prepare people, as John the Baptist did, for the coming of this new manifestation which would revolutionize the world. So these are three distinct epochs in the history of religion, and they're not morphed into one movement that changed actually goals and doctrines. So these are three separate conditions that occurred, and Bab himself and even Shaykh Ahmad, they mentioned this clearly. So Bab'i movement is not a continuation of Shaykhi movement. Shaykhi movement is not continuation of or branches of Shia Islam that has some discrepancies with the Shiites. These are distinct events and distinct basically epochs in the history of religion generally. Although when you read the common basically news and history from the Islamic point of view, they really believe these the same way that they believe, for example, Jews believe Jesus was a rogue rabbi, that he created his own book. They think Bab was the same way, or Baha'u'llah is the same way, which is really not the case.
Part 1. Pre-Revelation Days. Chapter 1. The Mission of Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í. At a time when the shining reality of the faith of Muhammad had been obscured by the ignorance, the fanaticism, and perversity of the contending sects into which it had fallen, there appeared above the horizon of the east that luminous star of divine guidance, Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í. He observed how those who professed the faith of Islam had shattered its unity, sapped its force, perverted its purpose, and degraded its holy name. His soul was filled with anguish at the sight of the corruption and strife which characterized the Shia sect of Islam. Inspired by the light that shone within him, he arose with unerring vision, with fixed purpose and sublime detachment to utter his protest against the betrayal of the faith by that ignoble people. Aglow with zeal and conscious of the sublimity of his calling, he vehemently appealed not only to Shia Islam, but to all the followers of Muhammad throughout the East, to awaken from the slumber of negligence, and to prepare the way for him who must needs be made manifest in the fullness of time, whose light alone could dissipate the mists of prejudice and ignorance which had enveloped that faith. Forsaking his home and kindred, on one of the islands of Bahrain to the south of the Persian Gulf, he set out, as bidden by an almighty providence, to unravel the mysteries of those verses of Islamic scriptures which foreshadowed the advent of a new manifestation. He was well aware of the dangers and perils that beset his path. He fully realized the crushing responsibility of his task. There burned in his soul the conviction that no reform, however drastic, within the faith of Islam could achieve the regeneration of this perverse people. He knew and was destined by the will of God to demonstrate that nothing short of a new and independent revelation, as attested and foreshadowed by the sacred scriptures of Islam, could revive the fortunes and restore the purity of that decadent faith. Bereft of all earthly possessions and detached from all save God, he, in the early days of the 13th century of the Hegira, when 40 years of age, arose to dedicate the remaining days of his life to the task he felt impelled to shoulder. He first proceeded to Najaf and Karbala, where in a few years he acquired familiarity with the prevailing thoughts and standards current among the learned men of Islam. There he came to be recognized as one of the authorized expounders of the Islamic Holy Writ, was declared a mujtahid, and soon obtained an ascendancy over the rest of his colleagues, who either visited or were residing in the holy cities. These came to regard him as one initiated into the mysteries of divine revelation, and qualified to unravel the abstruse utterances of Muhammad and of the imams of the faith. As his influence increased, and the scope of his authority widened, he found himself besieged on every side by an ever-increasing number of devoted inquirers who asked to be enlightened regarding the intricacies of the faith, all of which he ably and fully expounded. By his knowledge and fearlessness, he struck terror to the hearts of the Sufis and Neoplatonists and other kindred schools of thought who envied his learning and feared his ruthlessness. Thereby he acquired added favor in the eyes of those learned divines who looked upon these sects as the disseminators of obscure and heretical doctrines. Yet great as was his fame and universal as was the esteem in which he was regarded, he despised all the honors which his admirers lavished upon him. He marveled at their servile devotion to dignity and rank, and refused resolutely to associate himself with the objects of their pursuits and desires. Having achieved his purpose in those cities, and inhaling the fragrance which wafted upon him from Persia, he felt in his heart an irresistible yearning to hasten to that country. He concealed from his friends, however, the real motive that impelled him to direct his steps towards that land. By way of the Persian Gulf, he hastened into the land of his heart's desire, ostensibly for the purpose of visiting the shrine of the Imam Rida in Mashhad. He was filled with eagerness to unburden his soul, and searched zealously for those to whom he could deliver the secret, which to no one he had as yet divulged. Upon his arrival in Shiraz, the city which enshrined that concealed treasure of God, and from which the voice of the herald of a new manifestation was destined to be proclaimed, he repaired to the Masjid-i-Jumi, a mosque in which, in its style and shape, bore a striking resemblance to the holy shrine of Mecca. Many a time did he, whilst gazing upon that edifice, observe, "Verily this house of God betokens such signs as only those who are endowed with understanding can perceive. Methinks he who conceived and built it was inspired of God." How often and how passionately he extolled that city! Such was the praise he lavished upon it, that his hearers, who were only too familiar with its mediocrity, were astonished at the tone of his language. "Wonder not," he said to those who were surprised, "for ere long the secret of my words will be made manifest to you. Among you there shall be a number who will live to behold the glory of a day which the prophets of old have yearned to witness." So great was his authority in the eyes of the ulamas who met and conversed with him, that they professed themselves incapable of comprehending the meaning of his mysterious allusions, and ascribed their failure to their own deficient understanding. Having sown the seeds of divine knowledge in the hearts of those whom he found receptive to his call, Shaykh Ahmad set out for Yazd, where he tarried a while, engaged continually in the dissemination of such truths as he felt urged to reveal. Most of his books and epistles were written in that city. Such was the fame he acquired that the ruler of Persia, Fath Ali Shah, was moved to address to him from Tehran a written message calling upon him to explain certain specific questions related to the abstruse teachings of the Muslim faith, the meaning of which the leading ulamas of his realm had been unable to unfold. To this he readily answered in the form of an epistle to which he gave the name of Risale-i Sultani. The Shah was so pleased with the tone and subject matter of that epistle that he forthwith sent him a second message, this time extending to him an invitation to visit his court. Replying to this second imperial message, he wrote the following: "As I had intended ever since my departure from Najaf and Karbala to visit and pay my homage to the shrine of the Imam Riza in Mashhad, I venture to hope that your Imperial Majesty will graciously allow me to fulfill the vow which I have made. Later on, God willing, it is my hope and purpose to avail myself of the honor which your Imperial Majesty has deigned to confer upon me."
Okay, so let's stop here. This, the second paragraph, the few next pages relates to the story, and let's put the other, switch to the others. Yeah, second, right. Let's play the other one. Okay. So this is a little bit harder to read these segments because there's certain basically actors that are involved, and I read it a couple of times to figure out what's happening. The story really revolves around the birth of Bab and Baha'u'llah. One was in 1233. Baha'u'llah was 2 years older than Bab, and Bab was 1235. And of course, declaration of Bab in Siyah was 1268. So these are the dates that we need to remember. And the story really revolves around during the time that basically Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í was in Yazd. Basically, he told these prophecies, some of these prophecies and days, and how these prophecies and days got to the author. So now, if you look at the last line before the last paragraph, so Shaykh Ahmad was basically in Yazd, was talking to Abdul Wahhab, which was always followed by a scholar with him, but Shaykh Ahmad was really had Abdul Wahhab as his favorite person to talk to. And then this Abdul Wahhab, after Shaykh Ahmad left Yazd, really went into seclusion and basically wasn't communicating with everyone. But one of his friends or disciples that was around him was Haji Hassan Naini, which is, again, another person that, again, relayed this story that came from Shaykh Ahmad through Abdul Wahhab. And ironically, author is talking to Mirza Mahmud Ghamsari. And so this is an old man, Mirza Mahmud Ghamsari, talking to Nabil, which is the author, saying that when I was young, I was talking to Hassan Naini, which was one of the friends of the Wahhab who heard this story from Shaykh Ahmad. So it's a little bit difficult to pick this information. But the whole process was revolved, and what Mirza Mahmud Ghamsari was talking about was that when he found out that the birth of Bab was 1235, he was perplexed because what he heard from Haji Hassan Naini, which was basically confidant and friend of Abdul Wahab, that heard this date from Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í, was 1233. So he had this, if this is the Messiah, why there is a discrepancy? And later on, he finds out actually the date was birth of Baha'u'llah, not the Bab. So this is the whole story, and the Persian writings is sometimes difficult to know who's actually speaking at that time. So I tried to give you the story, so when we read it now, we can see actually what happened and what they're talking about. Okay?
The purpose was the birth of Baha'u'llah, not the birth of the Bab.
No, the date was. The date was the 1233. The whole story revolves that Shaykh Ahmad had divulged this date to basically Abdul Wahab that eventually got to Nabil, and how it got to Nabil. And ironically, the Mirza Muhammad Ghamsari, he was the one that says, well, there is discrepancy here. But when he figured out what the story was, then he really believed in the religion. So that's still, so here you have Haji Hassan Naini told Mirza Mahmud Qasemi the birth of the promised one was 1233, that which I have been announcing to you is now revealed. At this very hour, the light of the promised one has broken. O Mahmud, verily I say you shall live to behold that day of days. But Bab's birth was 1235. Later on, when Baha'u'llah declared, Mahmud found 1233 was the Baha'u'llah's birthday. So wait years after this, because remember, this is an old man talking about history of how believed in the Baha'i religion.
We're still a little confused here.
Yes.
When Shaykh Ahmad was talking about these events, were Bab and Baha'u'llah born, or was it even before their birth?
This is actually, we read this. It actually at the time, when Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í was in Mashhad, he wanted to go to Nur, where actually is the birth of Baha'u'llah. But he had to comply with the request of the Shah to pass through Tehran. And so he knew the date that the Baha'u'llah was going to be born. So we read it. It's quite fascinating, but it was a little bit confusing for me. I thought I would put it on the board. Okay,
I want to know
sure.
is that day Shaykh Ahmad said to Abdul Wahab, it was really in the Quran he find it, or?
It doesn't say. Later on there are signs, but he was the scholar that was searching for these days. But remember, they were feeling that the birth of this new religion is imminent. So this was in the spiritual realm. No, there are other dates. There is a book that is written. Sorry? Well, let's read. We're just reading history right now. I just wanted to make sure, because I couldn't understand it. I had to read it a few times, so to put the...
Real time it wasn't Quran for Bab.
Well, the reference... the references in Quran and Hadith relates to Day of God. It says, after the extinguishing the direct revelation from God, which Baha'is believe was the 12th Imam, was in year 260. That means 260 years after Hijrah, the last Imam, that went absent, right? One day of God, which is 1,000 years, the new manifestation will come. So when you're looking at that, if you add 1,000, it becomes 1260. 1260 is 1844, is the exact date that Bab declared. And of course, many of the Muslim scholars believe this too. It's not that it's not there, but they say he's an imposter because he found the date. Now he declared because he knew the date. Right, I haven't seen anything in the actual birth of day. This is the only reference that I saw, that someone is really telling a story about birth of Baha'u'llah from Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í. But it's a very fascinating story. I just wanted to make sure we don't get lost in the language.
Among those who, in the city of Yazd, were awakened by the message of that bearer of the light of God was Haji Abdul Wahab, a man of great piety, upright and God-fearing. He visited Shaykh Ahmad each day in the company of a certain Mullah Abdul Khaliq-i Yazdi, who was noted for his authority and learning. On certain occasions, however, in order to talk confidentially with Abdul Wahab, Shaykh Ahmad, to the great surprise of the learned Abdul Khaliq, would ask him to retire from his presence and leave him alone with his chosen and favorite disciple. This marked preference shown to so modest and illiterate a man as Abdul Wahab was a cause of great surprise to his companion, who was only too conscious of his own superiority and attainments. Later, however, when Shaykh Ahmad had departed from Yazd, Abdul Wahab retired from the society of men and came to be regarded as a Sufi. By the orthodox leaders of that country, however, such as the Nimatullahi and Jahabi, he was denounced as an intruder and was suspected of a desire to rob them of their leadership. Abdul Wahab, for whom the Sufi doctrine had no special attraction, scorned their false imputations and shunned their society. He associated with none except Haji Hassani Nayini, whom he had chosen as his intimate friend and to whom he confided the secret with which he had been entrusted by his master. When Abdul Wahab died, this friend, following his example, continued to pursue the path which he had directed him to tread, and announced to every receptive soul the tidings of God's fast approaching revelation. Mirza Mahmud-i-Khamsari, whom I met in Kashan, and who at that time was an old man over 90 years of age, and was greatly beloved and revered by all those who knew him, related to me the following story. I recall when in my youth, at the time when I was living in Kashan, I heard of a certain man in Nayin who had arisen to announce the tidings of a new revelation, and under whose spell fell all who heard him, whether scholars, officials of the government, or the uneducated among the people. His influence was such that those who came in contact with him renounced the world and despised its riches. Curious to ascertain the truth, I proceeded, unsuspected by my friends, to Nayin, where I was able to verify the statements that were current about him. His radiant countenance bespoke the light that had been kindled in his soul. I heard him one day, after he had offered his morning prayer, speak words such as these: "Ere long will the earth be turned into a paradise. Ere long will Persia be made the shrine round which will circle the peoples of the earth." One morning, at the hour of dawn, I found him fallen upon his face, repeating in rapt devotion the words, "Allahu Akbar," which is God the Most Glorious. To my great surprise, he turned to me and said, "That which I have been announcing to you is now revealed. At this very hour, the light of the Promised One has broken and is shedding illumination upon the world. O Mahmud, verily I say, you shall live to behold that day of days." The words which that holy man addressed to me kept ringing in my ears until the day when, in the year 60, I was privileged to hear the call that arose from Shiraz. I was, alas, unable, because of my infirmities, to hasten to that city. Later, when the Bab, the herald of the new revelation, arrived in Kashan and for 3 nights lived as a guest in the house of Haji Mirza Jani, I was unaware of his visit and so missed the honor of attaining his presence. Some time afterwards, whilst conversing with the followers of the faith, I was informed that the birthday of the Bab fell on the first day of the month of Muharram of the year AH 1235, the 20th of October, AD 1819. I realized that the day to which Haji Hassan-i Nayini had referred did not correspond with this date, that there was actually a difference of 2 years between them. This thought sorely perplexed me. Long after, however, I met a certain Haji Mirza Kamaluddin Inaraki, who announced to me the revelation of Baha'u'llah in Baghdad, and who shared with me a number of verses from the Qasadi-i-Rvaka'i, as well as certain passages of the Persian and Arabic hidden words. I was moved to the depths of my soul as I heard him recite those sacred words. The following I still vividly remember. O Son of Being, thy heart is my home, sanctified for my descent. Thy spirit is my place of revelation, cleanse it for my manifestation. O Son of Earth, wouldst thou have me seek none other than me, and wouldst thou gaze upon my beauty, close thine eyes to the world and all that is therein, for my will and the will of another than I, even as fire and water, cannot dwell together in one heart. I asked him the date of the birth of Baha'u'llah. The dawn of the 2nd day of Muharram, he replied, of the year AH 1233, the 12th of November, AD 1817. I immediately remembered the words of Haji Hassan and recalled the day on which they were spoken. Instinctively I fell prostrate on the ground and exclaimed, Glorified art thou, O my God, for having enabled me to attain unto this promised day. If now I be called to thee, I die content and assured. That very year, the year AH 1274, AD 1857 to 1858, that venerable and radiant soul yielded his spirit to God. This account, which I heard from the lips of Mirza Mahmud-i-Kamsari himself, and which is still current amongst the people, is assuredly a compelling evidence of the perspicacity of the late Shaykh Ahmad-I-AHSÁ'Í, and bears eloquent testimony to the influence he exercised upon his immediate disciples. The promise he gave them was eventually fulfilled, and the mystery with which he fired their souls was unfolded in all its glory. During those days when Shaykh Ahmad was preparing to depart from Yazd, Sayyid Kazim-i Rashti, that other luminary of divine guidance, set out from his native province of Gilan with the object of visiting Shaykh Ahmad ere the latter undertook his pilgrimage to Khurasan. In the course of his first interview with him, Shaykh Ahmad spoke these words, I welcome you, O my friend. How long and how eagerly have I waited for you to come and deliver me from the arrogance of this perverse people. I am oppressed by the shamelessness of their acts and the depravity of their character. Verily we propose to the heavens and to the earth and to the mountains to receive the trust of God, but they refused the burden, and they feared to receive it. Man undertook to bear it, and he, verily, hath proved unjust, ignorant. This Sayyid Kazim had already from his early boyhood shown signs of remarkable intellectual power and spiritual insight. He was unique among those of his own rank and age. At the age of 11, he had committed to memory the whole of the Quran. At the age of 14, he had learned by heart a prodigious number of prayers and recognized traditions of Muhammad. At the age of 18, he had composed a commentary on a verse of the Quran, known as the Ayatul Kursi, which had excited the wonder and the admiration of the most learned of his day. His piety, the gentleness of his character, and his humility was such that all who knew him, whether young or old, were profoundly impressed. In the year AH 1231, AD 1815 to 16, when only 22 years old, he, forsaking home, kindred, and friends, departed from Gilan, intent upon attaining the presence of him who had so nobly arisen to announce the approaching dawn of a divine revelation. He had been in the company of Shaykh Ahmad for only a few weeks when the latter, turning to him one day, addressed him in these words: "Remain in your house and cease attending my lectures. Such of my disciples as may feel perplexed will turn henceforth to you, and will seek to obtain from you directly whatsoever assistance they may require. You will, through the knowledge which the Lord your God has bestowed upon you, resolve their problems and tranquilize their hearts. By the power of your utterance, you will help to revive the sorely neglected faith of Muhammad, your illustrious ancestor." These words, addressed to Sayyid Kazim, excited the resentment and kindled the envy of the prominent disciples of Shaykh Ahmad, among whom figured Mullah Muhammad-I Mamakani and Mullah Abdul Khalik-I Yazdi. So compelling was the dignity of Sayyid Kazim, however, and so remarkable were the evidences of his knowledge and wisdom, that these disciples were awed and felt compelled to submit. Shaykh Ahmad, having thus committed his disciples to the care of Sayyid Kazim, left for Khurasan. There he tarried a while in the close vicinity of the holy shrine of the Imam Riza in Mashhad. Within its precincts he pursued with undiminished zest the course of his labors. By resolving the intricacies that agitated the minds of the seekers, he continued to prepare the way for the advent of the coming manifestation. In that city he became increasingly conscious that the day which was to witness the birth of the Promised One could not be far distant. That promised hour, he felt, was fast approaching. From the direction of Nur, in the province of Mazindaran, he was able to perceive the first glimmerings that heralded the dawn of the promised dispensation. To him, the revelation foreshadowed in these following traditional utterances was at hand. "Ere long shall ye behold the countenance of your Lord, resplendent as the moon in its full glory, and yet ye shall fail to unite in acknowledging his truth and embracing his faith. And one of the most mighty signs that shall signalize the advent of the promised hour is this: a woman shall give birth to one who shall be her Lord." Shaykh Ahmad therefore set his face towards Nur, and accompanied by Sayyid Kazim and a number of his distinguished disciples, proceeded to Tehran. The Shah of Persia, being informed of the approach of Shaykh Ahmad to his capital, commanded the dignitaries and officials of Tehran to go out to meet him. He directed them to extend a cordial expression of welcome on his behalf. The distinguished visitor and his companions were royally entertained by the Shah, who visited him in person and declared him to be the glory of his nation and an ornament to his people. In those days there was born a child in an ancient and noble family of Nur, whose father was Mirza Abbas, better known as Mirza Buzurg, a favored minister of the crown. That child was Baha'u'llah. His name was Mirza Hussein Ali. At the hour of dawn, on the second day of Muharram, in the year AH 1233, the 12th of November, AD 1817, the world, unaware of its significance, witnessed the birth of him who was destined to confer upon it such incalculable blessings. Shaykh Ahmad, who recognized in its full measure the meaning of this auspicious event, yearned to spend the remaining days of his life within the precincts of the court of this divine, this new-born king. But this was not to be. His thirst unallayed and his yearning unsatisfied, he felt compelled to submit to God's irrevocable decree and, turning his face away from the city of his beloved, proceeded to Kermanshah. The governor of Kermanshah, Prince Muhammad Ali Mirza, the Shah's eldest son, and the ablest member of his house, had already begged permission of His Imperial Majesty to enable him to entertain and serve in person Shaykh Ahmad. So favored was the prince in the eyes of the Shah that his request was immediately granted. Wholly resigned to his destiny, Shaykh Ahmad bade farewell to Tehran. Ere his departure from that city, he breathed a prayer that this hidden treasure of God now born amongst his countrymen, might be preserved and cherished by them, that they might recognize the full measure of his blessedness and glory, and might be enabled to proclaim his excellence to all nations and peoples. Upon his arrival in Kermanshah, Shaykh Ahmad decided to select a number of the most receptive from among his Shia disciples, and by devoting his special attention to their enlightenment, to enable them to become the active supporters of the cause of the promised revelation. In the series of books and epistles which he undertook to write, among which figures his well-known work Sharh Siyari, he extolled in clear and vivid language the virtues of the Imams of the faith and laid special stress upon the allusions which they had made to the coming of the Promised One. By his repeated references to Hussein, he meant, however, none other than the Hussein who was yet to be revealed, and by his allusions to the ever-recurrent name Ali, he intended not the Ali who had been slain, but the Ali recently born. To those who questioned him regarding the signs that must needs herald the advent of the Qaim, he emphatically asserted the inevitableness of the promised dispensation. In the very year the Bab was born, Shaykh Ahmad suffered the loss of his son, whose name was Shaykh Ali. To his disciples who mourned his loss, he spoke these words of comfort: "Grieve not, O my friends, for I have offered up my son, my own Ali, as a sacrifice for the Ali whose advent we all await. To this end have I reared and prepared him."
So let's stop here. I guess the first segment of it, which was the story related to the date of birth of Bab and Baha'u'llah and how those events occurred, is pretty clear. And of course, movement of Shaykh Ahmad from Khorasan to Tehran to Kermanshah to visit the prince, Muhammad Ali. Now, this segment, which is the last segment, refers to those two manifestations that is basically Shaykh Ahmad was referring to. One is basically Ali, which is the Qa'im, that means 12th Imam. The other one is called Zuhur Hosseini, means return of Hussein, which is the new manifestation. So it's clearly here, he's eloquently referring to two comings. And ironically, at the time that Bab was born, his son died. Ironically, his son was named Ali as well. And then later on, we read that he's mentioning this was a sacrifice for the Ali, which is the Qa'im. So these are the reason I'm mentioning this is really distinguishing between Zuhur Hosseini and the Qa'im, which is the 12th Imam. Any question?
Yes, I have a question here. In the paragraph where it says Shaykh Ahmad, having thus committed his disciples to the care of Sayyid Kazim,
Right.
the last part of the paragraph it says, "And yet ye shall fail to unite in acknowledging his truth and embracing his faith, and here's my question. One of the most mighty signs that shall signalize the advent of the promised hour is this: a woman shall give birth to one who shall be her Lord." Who is this referring to? The birth of Baha'u'llah.
It's birth of Baha'u'llah
Okay.
from Nur.
What's the Persian equivalent for her Lord? What does that mean?
No, this is their Lord. It's like he was saying, I believe this sentence is from Quran. I have to double check that. This is not from Shaykh Ahmad. But he's repeating it from references to basically like Virgin Mary that had born Jesus. It's the same reference. That the woman is going to give birth to her Lord.
But some people argue, I'm not sure whether they argue the English version of this or what's the equivalent that is used in Persian. Some people argue that Much like Christians, Baha'is set Baha'u'llah as equal to God because there are references to him as the Lord.
No, this is allegorical. These all religions, and this is the difference between doctrine of literal translation, which comes with the basically Shia culture. Actually, this doesn't exist in Sunnis. If you talk to Sunnis, they don't believe that the other manifestations said that they're God. All of these informations that comes even in Christianity, the Trinity that was created at the Council of Nicaea is man-made. Jesus never said he's God. So the key really is this area where, of course, Baha'is believe that the soul of a manifestation is ancient. Not his body, but his soul. It's not like us, that our soul is basically attached to our body at the time of conception. The question of the manifestations, their soul is ancient and coming from a realm where when it gets infused in their body, although unconsciously they may not basically reveal their station, but they know all the knowledge, prior knowledge and future knowledge of the spiritual realm. So it's not, and these are the contrasts between Shia Islam and Baha'i religion, where Shia believe that Muhammad was just an ordinary man. What ended up happening when Gabriel came to him, infused him with this knowledge. This is completely different. So what Baha'is believe is that these ancient souls already invested with all the knowledge of past and future of all religion, because they're coming from the realm of manifestations. We have to be very careful. He's not a piece of God. He's not part of God. Actually, he confesses that I cannot know, which came from that realm, cannot know the essence of God. He actually professes this. So these stories that you hear that they said is God is literal translation of Shiites try to discredit any other religion. It has nothing to do with reality. What the reality is that because they have this knowledge, they lose the sense of self. So what they say is reflection of God's will. So they do what in the realm of physical reality, what God would have done if he was on earth. So that's really the sense of it. So this issue related to assigning like Jesus as God, Jesus is Lord, is really man-made. It has nothing to do with reality of those manifestations. Yes.
One more thing. I remember all my life, only the Shia is talking about the 12th Imam return, not Imam Hussein. I don't know what.
No, there is. Yeah. Right.
They don't practice this.
No, because as I said, they don't. This is the whole point. Their idea is resurrecting. There's two concepts. One is basically creating just societies, or day of judgment, which is related. They stop there. They don't want to go any further. They literally believe that the world would end, actually. Most Christians believe that too, at the day of resurrection. Because it's not to their advantage to really look in Quran, which has references to the new cycle of manifestation. And this is really the whole point. From Adam to Bab, it was the first really cycle of revelation. Now, new cycle, which is going to last, which is 10,000 years in general. The new cycle, which is going to be 500,000 years, it starts with Baha'u'llah. So it is true what they think, that they're waiting for 12th Imam to come and basically do this resurrection and give justice to everybody. But they don't really read their books, which says that this unity of mankind occurs and the new revelation would come. Actually, most Sunnis, and the reason you don't see it in Shia is because it's completely against their own doctrine. But Sunnis believe in return of Christ. Right, it's a different issue. The Zuhur Hosseini, it is in Quran. Actually, if you look at there's a book by Dr. Motlaq, I can give it to you, it's in Farsi. It's actually, sorry? I have it. Sorry? Baha'u'llah in Quran. Actually, it shows paragraphs that describes the new society and the new religion that will come in. Which obviously, again, with the ecclesiastical architecture, which was church state that was created during Safavid dynasty, it doesn't mesh with the Islamic doctrine at all, or with Quran. Yeah, I have a copy also, I can give it to you. But they're
No, let him buy from you.
okay, I'm sorry.
So he can have it for himself.
There are 600 pages that are references to what's...
Movement on his library, you know.
Sorry.
But also he can keep the book and he can make
Okay, so this... But most of these, actually, even if you go back to other religions, not just Christianity that is waiting regarding the two occurrences of the new religion. So there are many signs. There is another book, I think, that basically describe prophecies related to these two comings. I'm not sure if it's in English. Right.
You know, majority of Muslims are waiting for the Asr Zahabi, which means Asr means era and Zahabi means Tala'i.
Right.
So,
Golden Age.
right, golden age. So, if you really look at it in Quran, it's referred to those dates.
But if the world ends, how could you have that? The problem is the Shiites distorted the process in such a degree that doesn't allow any thought that interprets allegorically the Quran itself what is rightful. And that's why the Shaykhi movement was the first movement that challenged the Shia doctrine, Shia 12's doctrine, related to one of the major principles of the Islamic religion, which was the day of resurrection. The Usulis and Akhbaris, at the time that they were fighting, which Akhbaris got wiped out because of this Usuli doctrine that forced everybody that was against their thought to be marginalized, basically. Well, Shaykh Ahmad, when we read this, you will understand. Actually, Sayyid Kazim Rashdi, which was disciple of an inheritor of Shaykhi movement, basically sent those people to find Ali, which was the Bab. So those 18 disciples of Bab were from Shaykhi movement, from basically Sayyid Kazim Rashdi that sent these people to find them. And once he said, and Bob mentioned that I would declare when these 18 people with myself, which becomes 19, would independently find him by themselves. So once Bob declared, the mission of Sayyid Kazim Rashdi to send these people, of course he passed away way before, was fulfilled. So Shaykhi movement terminated.
Looking for this person?
Sorry?
Why Shaykh didn't accept?
Well, there is very few left of branches of Shaykhi Islam. But remember, again, that portion became a branch of Shia Islam, which really still waiting for this Messiah to come, but they believe in allegorical day of judgment. But there is a minute remnant of those people around. It's not a movement anymore, it's just a culture. Like, for example, even Judaism today is a culture.
To add to that, you will always find renegades in any new idea. Even Baha'u'llah's brother eventually separated himself.
No, of course, but the reality in this environment is that, remember, it's not the internet didn't exist at the time, and people that had the religions and basically the way the information was disseminated was through word of mouth. And imagine the doctrines that were against this movement would portray this movement as a heretical, basically anyways. So for some guy in an obscure area in Pakistan that was a sheikh, that was a scholar, to even look at somebody claiming to be a qa'im, and everybody against them would say, yeah, the guy must be imposter anyways. So that's why those remnants occur. But it certainly mentions here majority of those became Bab'is and Baha'is anyways. Okay, any questions? So maybe,
For me, it's very important that name, how they mentioned years ago, if two people come, Ali named two times and Muhammad one time. How they figured out really?
well, this is the whole point.
Hussein Ali.
Right.
One time Ali come name, and one time Muhammad come. These are all.
Well, this is the whole point. The question is whether it's by accidents or, again, this is spiritual. There is it's called discovery or predetermined. And if you look closely at it, they actually match. So you can look at it either way. It's actually logical from a perspective of the knowledge of movement. It's the same thing as if I predict, for example, an event would occur in the future, and these are, by the way, all statistics. And if you say, let's say, give you an example which don't take it literally. I tell everyone I see for next month, right? There is an event in Baha'i Center, and people are going to have this event, and they're going to leave the lights on. It's for you to go and turn it off, okay? And I'm going to see everybody that I'm going to see, I'm going to tell them this, right? Now, one of them, when the event occurs, goes and turns the light off, right? Then I can claim, say, look, I told this guy. See, I predicted he's going to go, because I told him, and it's true. It is true.
Thought is come true.
No, but I told everybody.
He prearranged it.
Right? It appears that I prearranged it, actually. But it's really not the case. Now, somebody may actually would have turned it off and would have been in the crowd that I was telling this idea. So the issue is very intricate. It's not the issue of prediction of those. All right.
The Bab, who was born Ali Muhammad, was born in Shiraz on the 1st of Muharram in the year AH 1235, the 20th of October, AD 1819. He was the descendant of a house renowned for its nobility, which traced its origin to Muhammad himself. His father, Syed Muhammad Riza, as well as his mother, were descendants of the Prophet and belonged to families of recognized standing. The date of his birth confirmed the truth of the saying attributed to the Imam Ali, the commander of the faithful, "I am 2 years younger than my Lord." The mystery of this utterance, however, remained unrevealed except to those who sought and recognized the truth of the new revelation. It was he, the Bab, who, in his first, his most weighty and most exalted book, revealed this passage concerning Baha'u'llah. "O thou remnant of God, I have sacrificed myself wholly for thee. I have consented to be cursed for thy sake, and have yearned for naught but martyrdom in the path of thy love. Sufficient witness unto me is God, the exalted, the protector, the ancient of days."
Just 1 second. So now you see, talks about Ali. Now, if I in the Quran tell every Muslim that this guy is going to be named Ali, so if I see my son is going to be a scholar then I'm going to name him Ali, right?
But did he actually take that Baha'u'llah is going to be 2 years older than him?
No, this is a different story. We can discuss that later. Let's move on, because that's
Actually, I was referring to the paragraph. It says that
right.
my Lord is going to be 2 years
Right. He said.
younger than my Lord.
That's right.
But he didn't know Baha'u'llah at that time.
No, he didn't. Right. He actually never saw Baha'u'llah. Met.
And this is his statement that I'm going to be 2 years younger than my Lord. Okay.
While Shaykh Ahmad was sojourning in Kirmanshah, he received so many evidences of ardent devotion from Prince Muhammad Ali Mirza that on one occasion he was moved to refer to the prince in such terms: "Muhammad Ali I regard as my own son, though he be ascendant of Fath Ali." A considerable number of seekers and disciples thronged to his house and eagerly attended his lectures. To none, however, did he feel inclined to show the consideration and affectionate regard which characterized his attitude towards Syed Kazim. He seemed to have singled him out from among the multitude that crowded to see him, and to be preparing him to carry on with undiminished vigor his work after his death. One of his disciples one day questioned Shaykh Ahmad concerning the word which the Promised One is expected to utter in the fullness of time, a word so appallingly tremendous that the 313 chiefs and nobles of the earth would each and all flee in consternation as if overwhelmed by its stupendous weight. To him, Shaykh Ahmad replied, "How can you presume to sustain the weight of the word which the chieftains of the earth are incapable of bearing? Seek not to gratify an impossible desire. Cease asking me this question and beseech forgiveness from God." That presumptuous questioner again pressed him to disclose the nature of that word. At last Shaykh Ahmad replied, "Were you to attain that day, were you to be told to repudiate the guardianship of Ali and to denounce its validity, what would you say?" "God forbid," he exclaimed, "such things can never be. That such words should proceed out of the mouth of the Promised One is to me inconceivable."
Let's stop here. What did he say to this guy? No, it's very interesting. What's the prophecy here? No, word. What is this word?
Yeah, what is the word?
It says, the word which the Promised One is expected to utter in the fullness of time, a word so appallingly tremendous that the 313 13 chiefs and nobles of the earth would each and all flee in consternation as is overwhelmed by its stupendous weight. To him, Shaykh Ahmad replied, how can you presume this to sustain the weight of the word which the chieftains of the earth are incapable of bearing? So let's assume I tell you this. If those all noble people, all learned people, all the chieftains of the world cannot bear it, and they would deny it because they're supposed, in the Quran says they're supposed to raise against them, how could you bear it? Right? Then he questions his faith, right? Then what does he say? Seek not to gratify an impossible desire. Cease asking me this question and beseech forgiveness from God. That presumptuous questioner again pressed him to disclose the nature of that word. At last, Shaykh Ahmad replied, were you to attain that day, were you to be told to repudiate the guardianship of Ali and to denounce his validity, what would you say? You see? What is this? See, this is Ali he's talking about the concept of Islam. They're saying now, if somebody comes and asks you that this Shia that you're following is terminated, it's no longer there, what would you say? Because the new manifestation is going to come in. This is the new Ali that is going to come in, that is going to terminate the Islam. He says, God forbid, I don't want to leave my you see? I don't want to leave this behind. He says, look, you can't even answer my questions. You want to know the answer of what the guy is going to say? You're not going to believe in him anyways. So this refers to this really coming of the new manifestation which terminates Islam.
How grievous the mistake he made, and how pitiful his plight. His faith was weighed in the balance, and was found wanting, inasmuch as he failed to recognize that he who must needs be manifest is endowed with that sovereign power which no man dare question. His is the right to command whatever he willeth, and to decree that which he pleaseth. Whoever hesitates, whoever, though it be for the twinkling of an eye or less, questions his authority, is deprived of his grace, and is accounted of the fallen. And yet few, if any, among those who listened to Shaykh Ahmad in that city, and heard him unfold the mysteries of the illusions in the sacred scriptures, were able to appreciate the significance of his utterances, or to apprehend their purpose. Sayyid Qasim, his able and distinguished lieutenant, alone could claim to have understood his meaning. After the death of Prince Muhammad Ali Mirza, Shaykh Ahmad, freed from the urgent solicitations of the prince to extend his sojourn in Kirmanshah, transferred his residence to Karbala. Though to outward seeming he was circling round the shrine of the Sayyidu Shuhada, the Prince of Martyrs, the Imam Hussein, his heart, whilst he performed those rites, was set upon that true Hussein, the only object of his devotions. A host of the most distinguished ulamas and mujtahids thronged to see him. Many began to envy his reputation, and a number sought to undermine his authority. However much they strove, they failed to shake his position of undoubted preeminence amongst the learned men of that city. Eventually, that shining light was summoned to shed its radiance upon the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Thither he journeyed. There he pursued with unstinted devotion his labors, and there he was laid to rest, beneath the shadow of the Prophet's sepulchre, for the understanding of whose cause he had so faithfully labored. Ere he departed from Karbala, he confided to Sayyid Qasim, his chosen successor, the secret of his mission, and instructed him to strive to kindle in every receptive heart the fire that had burned so brightly within him. However much Sayyid Kazim insisted on accompanying him as far as Najaf, Shaykh Ahmad refused to comply with his request. "You have no time to lose," were the last words which he addressed to him. "Every fleeting hour should be fully and wisely utilized. You should gird up the loin of endeavor and strive day and night to rend asunder, by the grace of God and by the hand of wisdom and loving kindness, those veils of heedlessness that have blinded the eyes of men. For verily I say, the hour is drawing nigh, the hour I have besought God to spare me from witnessing, for the earthquake of the last hour will be tremendous. You should pray to God to be spared the overpowering trials of that day, for neither of us is capable of withstanding its sweeping force. Others, of greater endurance and power, have been destined to bear this stupendous weight. Men whose hearts are sanctified from all earthly things, and whose strength is reinforced by the potency of his power."
Just one comment here. This earthquake that you're seeing, this is part of the prophecies of end time, which is in Quran. So there are prophecies related to that, and he's referring to those generally. And the earthquake, of course, is not material. It's basically allegorical of the shift that is going to occur and the turmoil that is going to cause the earth. Please go ahead.
Having spoken these words, Shaykh Ahmad bade him farewell, urged him to face valiantly the trials that must needs afflict him, and committed him to the care of God. In Karbala, Sayyid Kazim devoted himself to the work initiated by his master, expounded his teachings, defended his cause, and answered whatever questions perplexed the minds of his disciples. The vigor with which he prosecuted his task inflamed the animosity of the ignorant and envious. "For 40 years, they clamored, we have suffered the pretentious teachings of Shaykh Ahmad to be spread with no opposition whatever on our part. We no longer can tolerate similar pretensions on the part of his successor, who rejects the belief in the resurrection of the body, who repudiates the literal interpretation of the miraj, the ascent of Muhammad to heaven, who regards the signs of the coming day as allegorical, and who preaches a doctrine heretical in character and subversive of the best tenets of Orthodox Islam. The louder their clamor and protestations, the firmer grew the determination of Sayyid Kazim to prosecute his mission and fulfill his trust. He addressed an epistle to Shaykh Ahmad, wherein he set forth at length the calumnies that had been uttered against him, and acquainted him with the character and extent of their opposition. In it he ventured to inquire as to how long he was destined to submit to the unrelenting fanaticism of a stubborn and ignorant people, and prayed to be enlightened regarding the time when the promised one was to be made manifest. To this Shaykh Ahmad replied, "Be assured of the grace of your God. Be not grieved at their doings."
The Shaykh Ahmad believed that actually humans had two. It's like he refers to humans. We call it soul and a body, and then soul resurrected. He had actually different stages of human body, and he referred it to a stone that they can make glass out of it. So he said the glass is inside stone, but is not the stone. So he said the stone. So this is how he was preparing the world, that this spirit or this entity that is within the body would raise up, and what is from dust turns to dust. And this is what they were saying, no. Similar to Christianity that says the body of Christ rose up. They are saying, no, this is marja, means his return, it was physical. Actually, body of Muhammad rose. So this is really quite interesting from that aspect, that he was preparing them. There's no body that rose. He was his spirit, or this essence, his essence rose. So again, obviously now that he was gone, in this fellow that was his pupil and took over direction of the Shaykhi movement, came with all these new attacks from everybody else because they wanted to quash his popularity and terminate Shaykh Ahmad movement generally, to bring in heralding the new Qa'im coming in and Zuhur Hosseini. Please go ahead.
The mystery of this cause must needs be made manifest, and the secret of this message must needs be divulged. I can say no more. I can appoint no time. His cause will be made known after Hin. Ask me not of the things which, if revealed unto you, might only pain you. There is a footnote. According to the Abjad notation, the numerical value of the word Hin is 68. It was in the year AH 1268, that is AD 1851 to 1852, that Baha'u'llah, while confined in the Seer Shal of Tehran, received the first intimations of his divine mission. Of this he hinted in the odes which he revealed in that year.
But the whole key is that this 1268 is the declaration of Baha'u'llah in Siyah Chal, which he prophesied that is going to occur during that letter that he wrote to his basically disciple, which was Sayyid Kazem Rashti.
How great, how very great is his cause, that even to so exalted a personage as Sayyid Kazim, words such as these should have been addressed. This answer of Shaykh Ahmad imparted solace and strength to the heart of Sayyid Kazim, who, with redoubled determination, continued to withstand the onslaught of an envious and insidious enemy. Shaykh Ahmad died soon after, in the year AH 1242, in Hadi, in the neighborhood of Medina, at the age of 81, and was laid to rest in the cemetery of Bab'i, in the close vicinity of the resting place of Muhammad in the holy city of Medina.